that whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am.
Hello there everyone, and welcome to this video with me here today. I want to talk about some of the things that I feel are very important for us in our constantly expanding understanding of ourselves and our ascension journey, not just within the light, but the embracing of the so-called dark. There's a lot of people who are very advanced in their dream world imaginative scopes of perception and who are very well adjusted, attuned, and masterful in the way they work with the unseen realms. Working behind the scenes is not always doing your tasks and chores that no one here in this world besides yourself gets to see. It's more of the having the unseen, long and lasting effects that are of a very profound and lasting nature, that affect the whole, that affect this dimension, that affect the whole planet in itself. But it's almost like the understanding of the core principles of truth and illumination, in which you kind of like apply these principles that are governed through divine integrity, and knowing that the universe is so well orchestrated that it's actually our universe within, our micro universe or the micronova within, that affects the entirety of the whole, and how actually our fears, because these are the well-established fears of the unknown. You know, we all understand that we here as humans, we have a limited perception. You know, our sensory abilities are somehow somewhat limited. So in this nature, we're getting, more adjusted with who we are, right? Who we are here, more well equipped in the way we masterfully work within the realms of light and shadow, and therefore not afraid anymore, because it's actually these fears that keep us in the light, that kind of makes us live a life of separation, even though we believe we live in the life of the light, but it can still be a life based on separation, as you've been seeing me talking about for many times in many videos, that how this illusory light can become almost like a soft cushion for the non-mature, non-advanced, or evolved, which means self-realized consciousness within a human conduit. In simple words, what this means is that our own fears of the unknown and limited sensory perceptions make us, in a way, inadequately kind of like be dealing with this world, how we deal with this world. So in a way, they keep us in a limited bandwidth of the way we kind of, the way we're structured, the way we function, the way our perception fluctuates. So there's people who are very well adjusted in their two intuitive abilities, because they're not afraid to go into the realms of the unseen. But that doesn't mean they have to have a fixed idea of what that is. So in a way, either our fears of the unknown or pre-established convictions and ideas of what we believe we're supposed to tune into, or what that's something that's unknown, let's call it something of a otherworldly or other dimensionally scope of existence. And in a way, it's our curiosity that makes us tune into, and we kind of want to get more from that. We want to have more reciprocity from the realms that are beyond our current sensory perceptions. So there's people who would go either into one extreme or the other. In many cases, right, people who are very well equipped, so they're kind of masterful in the way, they can enter into a channeling mode. They will right away access divine archetypes, very structured language of the light, and in many cases they will receive almost like patterns of energy through which they will read and channel the energy coming through. And a lot of readers, psychic people do that. As you know, in my cognition course, The Mastery of Seership, I also talk about the pitfalls of the hologram of deception that we can also become a part of when we're not in alignment with the inner integrity, which means the mastery of our inner world, the inner sensory perception, is the micronova, the micro universe within, through which we get to know the world. That's basically the only way to get to know of the world. I just listened to a beautiful It was a beautiful lecture again from Manly P. Hall. I need to tell you the title. I think the original title is The Unseen Forces That Affect Our Lives. But the title here on YouTube, someone shared, is The Living Universe Beyond Our Sensory Perceptions. And I think this fits so well with today's topic because I was wanting to talk about this in a greater scope for a while now. Because the reason why so many people are kind of like entering the fictional world of imagination and believing that this is the world of the light, the higher advanced wisdom, or the halls of great wisdom that many masters operate within or dwell within, but in fact, it's still a limited world of preconceived reality that's still structured within our own impulses that we kind of receive externally from the world, and then we imprint upon those through what we believe is that which we're entering into. We have to be quite skillful and masterful, so this is not like someone can teach you of this. But the main message I was receiving, because I began to enter more deeply into this, and I talk about the essence level work. I'm going to go into that as well. But it's like people who actually have a lot of fears or resistance to this, they either go into the projection of this world and realm, but it will still be kind of like a confined space existing within a much, much larger reality that's truly there. So it's like our own world will be the filter through which we can enter into a greater world. It's always like this. And how much we're purified from within, which means we're crystalline, right? It's like the crystalline essence, which is of the diamond, that is being brushed off of all those densities and misconceptions and illusions, which are basically distortions of truth. So with the knowing of integrity and kind of like polishing your integrity of the sovereign domain from within, you're getting more and more acquainted with this language of the light. But your true nature as a sovereign being is then how to apply the language of the light, working with it within the world of all. So in this world, there's also many realms that we also know as the realms of the shadow. But in many cases, like it's explained in this beautiful lecture, we, through cultures of different human timelines, we have distorted this, and we've talked about all these entities, and even now people have a fear when someone mentions the word entity. But in many cases, it can just be a projection of your own identity that's not integrated. So you will kind of convince yourself that it's an outside source, but it's just an energy that wants to come into you to be embraced in the fullness of unity, understanding of wisdom, of illumination. So what this means is that there's many levels and stages, right? One was this intuitive world of archetypes and symbolism, right? And we can still apply it, and people who channel or do reading kind of work, it has to come through in a structured way, because if you're translating a message to someone, a fellow human being, they need to hear something, because that's what they're coming to you to enhance their understanding. But there's a world, and I talk about this essence of illumination. Primarily, it's the essence level. So what is the essence level? The essence level is the unspeakable. It's, I have to tell you this, I just started to tune deeper into the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, and there is an online version. Someone reads through it. And yesterday I went to this long walk in the snow, and I just really, really went into this deep mode. And at the beginning, when there's this opening, the essence world, I just want to give you a little example. It's the world that's beyond. It's like the symbols and the language of light is very important, because it's these keys that it kind of your soul uses to unlock, and as you walk through certain gateways of experience. So when you're using the mind to decipher the language, right? Even if you tune into an audiobook or you read a book, it's still your mind that's the first perception. It's the first sensory reception, right? So the way you receive, it's still something tangible. Even if it's written or spoken word or a message you hear somewhere, the way you receive it, that's still a message in a way. There's an element of that message triggering something within you, however, that's innate, that's deeply imbued within your DNA. And sometimes it's just a certain spark or code that's needed to unveil a whole new language within you. So yesterday I was listening to that, and it wasn't even until the beginning of the whole the whole session, through the lecture, and it was almost like something was spoken in the beginning of the land I think it was Uluru or something. I don't know what was the word. I don't remember now because I was in this almost like half trance state. I was listening and tuning into that recording. And I just saw like this vision, but it was not a sight kind of vision. It wasn't sensory. It was just a feeling of greatness that exists at that level that's still there. You know, great Thoth as the wisdom teacher, he's teacher of many ages, Hermes, the Trismegistus, Trismegistus. I don't know how to pronounce it again. Sorry, English is not my first language, as you already know. But it's like this wisdom, right? Wisdom of the ages, wisdom of the sages, and it's the language that's like the old language, the way it's transmitted. But beyond that language, there's an essence. So sometimes our mind will not comprehend what's being spoken. It won't have an ability to place this in the construct that our mind has been born into, programmed into, kind of trained for. So sometimes, you know, for us to receive wisdom at the higher level, we kind of have to work around it. That's why when readers will give you information, they will give it to you in an archetypal version, because they're not here to really to tell you facts, figures in your own life. You have to decipher it on your own. You have to apply it to your own self, your own wisdom. You know, I basically work the same way, but I work more at the level of essences. I don't work so much the archetypes and that. Yeah, of course we all do, because the language of divine origin descends and travels into this world through all of these layers. So like our body has so many bodies, it consists of many bodies and layers, so like overlays of energy. It's the same way like how information travels. So you have a predominant way that you function, and usually when you know yourself, you kind of like the things you invite in your life are the right triggers for you, and they will be very unique for you. But people who are very mentally taking in the concept and information, trying to force it into their understanding, it's kind of like they're pushing against it, and this is not how wisdom truly comes to you. This is not the very nature of wisdom at all. um, so for me yesterday, you know, that was the pivot of the experience. Everything I listened to after no longer held the same strength and resonance, because the original was just like a certain word I heard. I don't even know what it was, to be honest. There was something in the beginning of it that triggered an ancient memory, and I remember back these great halls of wisdom, you know, that my being participated with, and I felt the greatness in which we understood this project of light as children of the light, or children of the sun, who basically, like Thoth says, we became a part of the world of men, but not really as men, you know, souls of the men, which means we're kind of similar and yet different, you know, so the same but not the same. And it's very beautifully explained there, beyond the kind of explanations that kind of like people are trying to reinforce into our world at this day and age. It's really good that what we're doing now fits where we are in terms of consciousness, in terms of the evolutionary consciousness. But there is something like that these works of art have that are timeless in nature. So they have the keys and the codes that when they spark something within you, it's beyond what the mind can read or interpret. So that's my today's message, is how much the language of the unseen is coming through the essence, and for you to be a keen observer and initiate of light, living in the world of basically duality, so also worlds of shadow, many different realms of being, how you understand the perfection of everything. So even how Manly Hall says, when you understand and you trust that this universe is in itself perfection, and that there is great law that governs everything, which I call the creation principles. So in this notion and understanding, you don't see things that can go against you, that other people can enforce something within you, you know, or something that is sort of working to prevent you to experience something, right? In that way, he says this basic integrity and knowing that there's this great wisdom in divine nature of things. So for us to have that awareness, we have to work again with our inner world. We can't find those answers on the outside of things, because it's the inner world that will unlock to potentials of everything that we're basically emitting, transmitting into this world, creating in this world, designing, reshaping, transfiguring. So I really advise you to go check out that beautiful lecture. It's amazing. I want to also say why it's so important, this silence, because like Thoth says in the beginning of the Emerald Tablets, the great truth is unspeakable. There was many times when, you know, in my own spirit initiations, I feel such a profound knowing, and whatever I share here with these videos and messages is such a small, condensed, compartmentalized version. I feel sometimes I'm doing my best, but there's levels and layers that you offer to assist fellow man, fellow humans. But in truth, those of us who work with greater levels, who came here to be, uh, it's almost like the ones of the unspeakable to be in the realms of the speakable. It's what I'm hearing now. And it's difficult in a way because it's like half of the time you will feel like even with all your best efforts, what you're truly trying to convey is in a way it's not even for you to convey. You're here to emit that. So I just put this pink kunzite crystal here, very tightly here in my neck, because I want the truth to come through love. Not that knowledge is, as you know, many people can give you knowledge. You can get it through books, you can get it through teachers, you can get it through many numerous ways, right? But the application of that through experience, and experience is the biggest gateway towards learning the integrity of the world through integrity of the self, which means you're more and more trusting the great divine structure of life. I call it the great divine design. I even started, as you know, to write a book about it, but then kind of my path took me elsewhere because there was other things I needed to finish first. But within my soul, within my very essence of soul, because there's many levels, there's a triad nature of our composite being. Within me, there's like this timeless wisdom that I can only feel when I'm truly just with myself. The moment I come here in front of camera, doing the video, recording something, preparing content, it's already the condensed version, it's already the filtered version coming through, and it's the best we can do, basically. And even that is very well qualified to get us always to the next step. But for us to truly live our purpose, our highest purpose, to serve the ultimate truth and unity consciousness through the wisdom of illumination, is to keep on expanding that. And there is no better way than that silence, because it's the inner silence and that benevolent void, which is basically, like I always say, the void that is full of itself. It's not empty at all. That void is the highest fulfillment of the self. So for me, I've been noticing a strong metamorphosis period now, where a lot of the concepts I had that I used to put out messages in language, it's almost like for the past few months I felt like my language is sort of not like blocked, it's still there, I can still write messages, but there was a missatisfaction with me actually writing messages, writing anything that's based on the textual kind of matter. It felt like almost like primitive to me. I felt like I've outgrown this. And it's not like the language is not important, because let's face it, it's the way we communicate, and in many ways it's how people receive messages. But whenever we're being programmed and trained into the next level, there will be a huge period of silence. It's like you're walking through a tunnel of light into the new next stage. And at that stage, you really have to learn to trust the unimaginable, the unthinkable, the great mystical. And that's when you're really being trained. That's when you're really going through that tunnel of the shadow within light. So light within shadow, it's both one, it's unity. Beyond all dualistic polarity, there's just the polarity of creation. It's that luminous union within. And in many cases, you'll have instances when you're going to doubt. It's like, what about what I've done before? What about, the way my language comes through? What's changing? Am I now going to be the silent monk? This is not where we're here for. Um, but there is something within, and in my own example, I'll tell you that it's being strongly altered, because the very nature of our DNA is changing, and DNA is in its own, it's like spirit molecule of language of the divine, and how it communicates through all forms of life, through the great essence of life that I call the seed of life, or the great family of Elohim calls it like such. So whenever we're being worked into the next stage, there'll be like this, like this, each creation has its in breath and then its out breath. So I felt like for the past year, I've been going through, and I've been experiencing a huge out breath, and everything was like the finalization of that out breath. It came to its completion of its materialization, but there was no sense of new beginning yet. Everything I felt, the language at that level that I've held, everything that I had to convey at that level felt like it's waning, it's gone. And many times when I try to share that message, people believed it to be the end or disappearance of the great Polona Aurea dawn. It wasn't about that at all. It was the out breath that it was experiencing, right? And then out breath to the last levels when you're like very close to the last stages of that cosmic outpouring, that out breath through you. You're going through this immense tunnel of light, basically. You can feel it like it's a tunnel of shadow. But this is because in this world, to truly be a master of polarity, a master of unity, you have to be both of master of light and dark. So that's why a lot of people who are escaping only the upper worlds, and they're having a projection of what the upper world is in order to satisfy themselves or their filter so they could feel safe in this world, because they haven't yet developed a natural sense of trust that the universe is integral. We are sovereign. Everything is sovereign, even with so much coming through about entities, archons, creatures, leeches, everything leeching on, sucking the life force out of us, because of our own non-understanding. So when there's still growth there in the process and the lack of total maturity, it's a part of the growth process, and it's the experience that will eventually culminate that growth process. So when you don't allow yourself to experience, which the mind often does, it wants to prevent the experience, but it's through the experience that you're actually walking into the next evolutionary stages of your journey. So you have to know yourself both as light and the shadow. And in many of my mastery courses, I teach about this, especially in my last 13 octave course, which is a synthesis course that talks about the mastery of illumined creation. It's not just working within the light, right? All this now new agey manifestation things, hocus pocus. It's so much more than that. It's so much deeper. It's vaster. So I'm feeling like, and it's a message they also gave me recently, it's I felt a little comfortable in this void and feeling of non-infatuation with everything I used to do before. It was interesting. It's not that the notion to serve, the benevolence for purity of service is always there, but the way that's being done, that was just, it's like it was out breathed to its maximum ending, and it felt a little scary. But they were telling me if I want to work at the new energy level, it's like my new cycle, I really have to allow myself to be in this spaceless, almost like that suspended animation state, right? It wasn't a Twilight Zone at all. But I have to tell you, there's so many beings who are working only with what they call the language of light. But for the language of light to exist and be partaken in every world of creation, for that type of creation to expand, where it's moving towards, and in the great wisdom of thought, it was also shared that in the end there will be just this final unity beyond all. It's like just coming together. We can see that galaxies are already moving towards each other. They're already making inclinations that life is sort of prone to that, right? It's coming. It's all about the great coming together. People are seeking their divine counterparts, their partners first, right? It begins with seeking the greater self, connection with your higher self, merging with your soul, embodying your soul. All of those are indications that the world, so many worlds, the micro worlds, macro worlds, it's all part of what I call the great multidimensional ascension. It's all coming together. It's this great divine synthesis at play, as the divine orchestra is also pulling its out breath from its, extended state that it wanted to. At the beginning, when this creation was implied, it was intended, it was meant to come out this way. So people who live only in the light, they perceive that which goes seemingly against the light as non-good. And we need to fight that. We need to fight evil. We need to fight the shadow. Something's lurking in the shadow. So instead of mastering that and understanding it as a part of the cycle, that that understanding is like Manly Hall said, knowing that whatever exists, we already know there's a perfection in that. We don't go against it. We don't try to change it. We catalyze ourselves towards our inner growth. So to grow in the language of light, and the knowing how that is applied in the what we call our own inner underworld, or the collective underworld, which is the world of shadow, anything that hasn't yet been integrated, hasn't been understood and moved into wisdom. Like many ancient wisdom speakers, like in Emerald Tablets, Toth talks about, sorry, my language gets twisted sometimes, these words. Emerald Tablets, Toth, it's like tongue-tied, seriously. But he talks about, as you know, this word, the great halls of Amenti. And even though you say, oh, I understand what that is, right? I've heard it. Yeah, you go Google it. Nowadays, everything is so fast perceived. It's so quickly we can so quickly attain something or information from the internet, but to attain it from within, it's still a process for most individuals. Because even with the whole seeming fast pace of everything, everything can be received so fast, instant download, instant messaging, instant gateways. The integration work is not that instant. And this is what a lot of people forget, and they're wanting this fast pace. It's like they're rushing towards that. Oh my god, we have to finish this until, I don't know, our great Andromeda will meet our own galaxy, the Milky Way. It's like, I have to do this so the cycle completes itself. You know, that's the notion of that, is again the non-understanding that everything you're doing, everything that's in your life is already part of it all. Whether it's more prone now, you're more in the shadow realm, you're more in the light realm. It's basically all just, you know, like bouncing here and there. It's like fluid, flexible. You're learning new languages. You know how people are learning physical languages the same way we're reading new languages, new archetypes of the divine. So these are actually gateways and keys to the great wisdom. And each time we're getting little nudges, bits and pieces. And for me, when I remember of my own greatness, right, because we all have that, but specifically for those beings who came here, who are of what's called the Atlantean descent, which means they're of the experiment that was otherworldly, that was a seeding of this energy of wisdom here on earth. And I call it the project of illumination, which was happening in many levels, waves, and stages. And I have a video about that as well. The Atlantis and the cycles of illumination. So once you have a greater understanding of all of this, your only question that remains is, okay, how am I applying myself in this? How am I knowing my cycles? You know, I'm just personally also going through a very deeply transformative cycle. I actually just found out that I'm in the Sati cycle. What's it called in the Vedic astrology, which are very intense. I think cycles associated with Saturn, and Saturn is constantly there because I'm a rising um, ascendant sign of Sag, but basically Moon in the first house, right close to each other in Capricorn. So these two signs are now very much, you know, it's all a game of Saturn moving there through these points as in its transit. So it's for me, it's like, oh, just moves out of one sign, gets into the next one, well, great. And it feels like this constant it's kind of like that treading through those murky waters. And basically I was just contemplating now how actually these cycles have been interpreted as bad. You know, it's like you're going to have so many challenges and this and that, but it's basically just a very deep slowing down so that your psyche can catch up with the greater multidimensional perception and awareness. In my case, that's what this serves for me, because me as a human, I was used to certain ways of doing. As everyone else, when we come to this world, we get this body, we get the beliefs, we get the whole program package. And for me specifically, you know, the more you have a very heightened intellect, that basically is a match, a reflection of your consciousness. And I have otherworldly consciousness. That's just what I am. I'm a galactic seed. And when you come here on Earth, it's like you have even more challenges to catch up with this realm, with this sort of language, with the way things are here. So when I have these cycles, they're actually slowing me down so that I can adapt. You know, I can basically, that the higher template of my wisdom can be even, you know, can be able to precipitate into this realm, can be managed, can be maintained in this realm. Because you can have wisdom, but can you manage it? Can you maintain it? Everything in life is like this, you know. Even people who acquire great amounts of money overnight, can they manage it? Can they maintain it? In most cases, you see, if the consciousness is young, people lose it overnight. They just squander it somewhere. So it's the same thing here. So things that are lasting and building, it's like foundation after foundation, are so important. And this is why the knowing how to create both through light and shadow are so important. The shadow will have aspects that will initiate you in the ways that the light cannot, and that you need, because in creation, the whole world, the game of mastery is the mastery of polarity. That's that ultimate. And it's knowing yourself as the love. It's like you arrive, and it's not a physical arrival, it's the arrival of yourself, meeting yourself as this, the love. And at the end, beyond all languages, beyond all forms of what has been transmitted through you, what you've been conveying, the personas you were, the mirages you played, the masks you put on. At the end is that this final is the arrival of the self, the arrival of you, return of love. Not the love as an emotional state or a person that you believe is a reflection of that love. But the love is that final, ultimate alchemical point of transfiguration that leads you into the next stage, whatever. So for me, it's been like this dreadful, drudging, long, arduous journey. And I thought, oh, it would end with this year, but it's still continuing. I'm looking in online. I'm like, I'm at the peak of Sarasati. What? No, I didn't I just have it like not a long time ago. It's like, yeah, it depends. It can hit your ascendant moon, sun, so it can be many times. It really depends. And for me, I felt like it's chosen, as a soul chooses that. So people who are especially very fast, and I'm very fast, I do things fast, I think fast, I work fast. So I have to be kind of like intentionally slowed down, like I said, so the psyche can readjust and realign. Because this is what mastering polarity is about. It's not just rushing forward and moving into the light. There has to be great wisdom. So even when thought speaks, I hope I said it right this time, thought. Okay, thought, I can say it, right? When he speaks, I mean, it's not him, but you can still feel an essence, even though there's like a man reading that scripture, but the essence is there, and there's certain glimpses of that essence that spoke to me more than the spoken word. So that's my message today. The unseen realms, the unseen world can only be applied to and accessed through essence level. And the essence level cannot be understood without the archetypal languages. So there's levels that initiate you as a soul to move through these different stages, basically. So someone looks at you and says, wow, you're so wise, how did you get to be this way? They don't know your galactic history, they don't know everything you've been there, and all they see is this mirage. They see this certain persona, this certain body, and people usually apply you like this. They apply themselves to you this way, through your body, through your whatever you're projecting right now, and they miss the point. And in many of us who carry this otherworldly energy, we've been misinterpreted, we've been misunderstood, like on and on, over and over again. But it's because when you function at the essence level, there's no program in most people to read that level. So of course they will read you from the level that's comfortable for them, and that means automatic misinterpretation, mislabeling. And in many people, they still have that wound, especially otherworldly souls, they have this wound for not being understood and, applied properly in this world. And they're trying so hard to get their messages across. And I used to be the same way in the beginning stages of my journey. I really tried hard. I really felt like, oh, if I could just come out the right way, speak the right words. So this year, Spirit is saying, no, just speak whatever comes to mind. And I had much more prepared. Now it's more like, I don't know. I just have an inkling, like a life force pulls me to record something. And I don't know exactly what's it going to be, how it will come out. But Spirit is guiding me more into this instant translation of love. It's not so much based on knowledge, but it's always an invitation. Remember, in the eclipse transmission video, the great message was that we're entering into the essence of invitation, of course, not automatically, but those of you who are ready. It's always like this. There is no other way. So when you're in this essence, it's like you're inviting the energies, it's like inviting itself through you, because it recognizes the space. You have created the space. So to create that space means like you have to unwind in the cycles of everything you believe is important there, everything you render to be important, which means if there's something that still ties you to that cycle, but you already want to be also somewhere else, the soul will not allow you to. You have to finish up. You have to make amends with those things. And that's why people say, well, that's the great law of karma. It's not like you get this, you do that, you give and get. But it's more like a complete perfection of the completion of the cycles we must walk through in order to be where we want to be at the soul evolutionary level and as a being of light, pure spirit. So, very fascinating. The last message, like I said, are parting messages that for many of you, maybe in the similar way that I'm going through this experience, of course, in your own intimate, unique way. I never want to reinforce my happenings to you because I'm an individual as well. I receive at my own heightened level, but it's like the energy of how we perceive things in the behind the scenes, the imagination, the dream scopes, it's changing profoundly. And I've never had the kind of dreams that most people describe. They have these dream messages as symbols. And so I also had that, but it wasn't my primary. My primary state is a lot of the sleeps is like, not that I'm conscious, but it's a feeling like I'm there, or I know I was there, I went there. Just during the eclipse, I had to sleep. I fell asleep for like 2 hours. I was gone, and that happens so rarely for me. And I was gone for like 2 hours, and I just knew consciously. I said, I went somewhere. I was somewhere. Wow. And I still woke up with that feeling like I don't know where I am now. And I had many times these experiences which are more essence based. But the symbology is also important, and it's used to unlock a new gateway. But we as beings, we don't have to get attached to the symbology. People always say, well, this dream symbol means that for me, or this symbol, when I see it, means that. Even symbols are expanding and growing. Don't get attached to a particular symbol or whatever form of receiving. As a being who is evolving in consciousness, you have to stay open. That's why the energy we are working with, sorry, is the invitation space, where it's like things don't have to be obvious for us to understand it. One example I can give you is we just had a beautiful annual Venus trine Jupiter. And I was asking myself, because it says in this astro calendar I have, ooh, happy, happy day. And when I was in this experience, I didn't feel at all like that. So I went into my individual astrology there in astro.com, the free version. It was like totally different. It was much a position. I had the square or something. I'm like, see? But then there was another message coming through, right? And it's not that conjunction wasn't very prosperous in a way, but we just had the eclipse and was very much close to each other. So basically that conjunction was under the influence of the eclipse, so it was overshadowed by the eclipse. So the effect of it wasn't as obvious as sometimes we have certain connections to be. And sometimes the connections will influence us, like trigger points right away. Many times we get triggered, but especially if they are very harmonious alignment of refined energy, they will have subtle effects. So that's why the behind the scenes, the inner realm work is so important. So don't neglect this part of you. Give yourself time and space. Don't just be out there seeking information from all sorts of sources and resources without committing to your own silence and space. And don't think that just because you're there standing and staring at the ceiling and just, that's not the same as getting bored or being bored, but being in a deeply contemplative state. That's really important, as you know. Krishnamurti says, the more you can be in that state, that's the innocent state. That's when the soul is in its most pure innocent state, when you're thoughtless. And try to be in that state the most you can, because especially, people who are very much in the mind because they're so programmed in the mind, or those of us who have such highly important missions here, we can also get in that state for different reasons and purposes. But still, we have to find those ways. We have to find the blank slates without feeling that there's something wrong with that. And now we're blank. And whenever I have that, the first egoic tendency is like, I'm not doing enough. And the ego always says that. It's never enough. But the love there is saying that's a part of the transfiguration. It's the new energy essence of invitation. It's that feeling of, wow, everything has magic, even if whatever you do, maybe it's just watching, sometimes I like to watch a black and white movie. I don't know. It's just, I don't know, but it's not for the movie itself, but many times it aligns me with the sort of energy that maybe I need to receive in that moment. Again, the symbols are not just in, if you read scriptures or, symbology book or something. The language of the symbols is the language of spirit, and mostly I receive it out there in nature, but it's beyond what we think it to be, what we want to make it to be. Okay, so the message today, working with the unseen, is just observing yourself. Just be that great contemplating force of your life. Be the consciously initiating force, because many times we did unconscious acts and they didn't bring us much of that which is the unveiling towards true gateways of wisdom. So we have to know, we have to watch ourselves, in all these different stages. That what leads to our conscious evolution. But it's not giving something a particular meaning or giving yourself the importance because, ooh, you always get messages, ooh, you always get channeled information. There will be periods in life, even with the most advanced intuitive souls who are working with, let's say, with a huge database of symbology and archetypal awareness. But there will always be, when it's a healthy conscious journey of evolution, levels of their journey when they just simply unwind from everything. Doesn't mean now, ooh, you kind of retrograde back, but there's a slowing down. Like I said, the psyche needs to adapt to a new way of you being in this world. For me, that is interesting new development. I have it very difficult time talking about it. These are things that I can't express with words. But I also, as a parting message, want to say don't become entrapped or entranced by visual images, just perceiving people and thinking that's what they are, that's who they are. Recently, I saw a video from a beautiful being who shared their almost like attack online through people. You know, people project a lot nowadays. You know, like the way you can get information instantly from all kinds of sources, you can get an instant access to humans who are outside on online, sorry, doing this work like this. And people think, oh, that's just there for the taking. No, no, it's not. You know, not the way maybe you want it. It's there as an offering, not as a taking. That's a difference. So I was observing that and seeing how much projection is there, but it's because the consciousness is still so unevolved. It's just how it is. And at the end stages, you know, I had so many of these experiences myself. I had so many immature projections from people because they simply think, "Ooh, that's something for me," you know, out there. That I'm gonna go for that. But it slowly kind of, it's just withdrew. It was withdrawing now. Still comes sometimes, but it's not as strong as it used to be because those were hard initiations for me. How to truly be and cultivate my power here in this world, even amidst all that, you know, that lurking, whatever. Because in any way, even when it was happening, I never perceived it as now that's something that goes against me. It's just a fact, part of life, part of this world. I know there's people who don't want that and they will say, oh, I did not sign up for this. Oh, get me out of this. You know, yeah, in a way we did. You know, being a part of this world is already automatically signing up for this. That's the great awareness, to know that, to not judge it. Um, but in the last few months, I'm noticing this new development because just recently someone was accusing me of something because I didn't ask their questions on Instagram. I don't do that. I don't engage in people, you know, they want to satisfy their mind. So they're like provoking and you don't answer the first time. They keep sending you messages and messages until you're like, hey, buddy, get off my Instagram. That's not what I'm here for. I'm not here to feed your ego. You know, I'm working with conscious individuals who really want to go deeper. And that's what I do. I do it here at the level I can offer it here. I do it on Patreon with my group. Ascension devotees, and I do it in personal work, one-on-one work, which means that when people are like that, you know, it's like they're trying to test you, and we do not feed what they want. They get like, wah! And I remember in the past, I got upset as well, many years ago. I remember, and there was an element of me, even though my mind said, I know I don't take it personally. I know this is them and all that. I know I'm here to be the light and all this, but there's an element of me that still felt hurt. You know, there was an element of me that still felt I'm the human counterpart. I don't want to be treated this way. I want to be seen for what I am. That was okay. And because I did my inner work, now what I'm noticing it with the latest recent provocation was right on the eclipse point. That was funny. It was the night of the eclipse when I woke up in the middle of the night and I see that message in my inbox. I was that person who was really trying to push my buttons and provoking me, telling me all these things and whatever. And I'm like, I was just remembering how I used to be in the past. And usually, you know, if someone was disrespectful, I didn't even want to answer. I was just like, ooh. Now I was like, oh, I'm going to answer it. It was almost like a play to me, you know, and so it's nothing special. And I was laughing, you know. So in the video, when the beautiful being was sharing their experience, I was actually laughing, not at them, but the stories, you know, and scenarios of what people are actually saying and doing online. I was like laughing, and it wasn't that ha ha, making fun of it laugh. But it was, again, it was that higher laugh of recognizing the perfection in everything. And it's like, yeah, we all sign up for this. Whatever kind of part you're partaking in, it doesn't matter. But it's the unseen. You have to tap into the energy. Doesn't mean, okay, now you get to heal others, right? You're not here to send anyone anything. Let's face it. Everyone has to go either way. If you just bake them bread and give them bread, they're not going to learn how to do it on their own. If you give them light, they will not develop their own. It's a fact. So to work with the levels of mastery is just to have compassion for every experience. So whenever there's communication like that, if people feel they're attacked, somehow part of something unwanted, yes, it's very important we speak about these things. It's important we exchange, we engage. But at the same time, we don't have to see it as a big deal from a very high vantage point. You know, when the work of that integration of the self, when the inner child is no longer, oh, wounded, right? It's important to address those wounds. It's the part of our being here. Otherwise, we cannot express the light in the world of duality. But when we move into the unified conscious polarity within, we're just like that sigh of relief, because you no longer play the roles, you no longer take things too seriously. Like Buddha under the tree, when he also saw those praying energies as just aspects of life. But if you don't feed the attention, they just dissolve. And for me, these instances are actually aspects that show me how much I've grown in my own state of conscious integration from where I used to be maybe a couple of months or years back. And it's beautiful for me. And I don't do like, oh, now I'm done with that. I never do that. I never say that, because as you know, Spirit will always serve you the portion of the truth when you speak the words of untruth to yourself. So you're going to give you a little slap on the back, a little push on the belly. So just simply say, oh, thank you. I acknowledge my growth in this. But never finalize things, because that will be that will be to your detriment. It's always, as you know, it's how our beautiful life here is. Sometimes even when people come to me and they ask me these questions and they receive something they're not yet ready or willing to hear, they wanted a different answer. That's already manipulation, because you're trying to convince yourself, oh, but that's not me, that's not for me. Well, then why did you come here? Why were you guided? And why did this answer come to you? Why, I never give answers directly, because I work through spirit, and spirit does not work that way anyway. Spirit illuminates, enhances upon things, it deepens the understanding, but it never gives you a push that's direct, because then your growth is somehow hindered in that process. It's not benevolent. So work towards your benevolence, integrity, and understanding that everything works in divine law and perfection. And if you will somehow find the time to listen to that lecture from Manly P. Hall, or even tune into the Emerald Tablets from Thought, he's great thought, right? By thought, it's a thought of wisdom. Just take it in lightly. Don't try to reinforce it or put it in a box. Like, I want to understand this. I want to be spiritual. Don't try to understand it. Usually, when I'm not at the level, when something's meant to hit me, it's like my consciousness is already prone that it will stop listening. I'm going to focus on something else, and maybe something comes later. So it's really working with the unseen, is also not just the externalized energies, but with you. Basic priority is you. Are you susceptible to something? When you are, it flows. It's effortless. It's easy. When you're not susceptible to something very easily, it means, okay, maybe it's not my energy. Maybe I need to go here and there and, expand this within me. All that you do like this, eventually, when you know how to pull it back in, it expands you from the core. So that's always our main focus. That's what we should be all aiming towards from within. So I know I said I will do many parting messages. One turned out to be many. But either way, you know me. I'm a very interesting combination of a silent hermit, conscious observer, and, when I have to, when I need to, when I'm pulled. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this message. Know that the unseen is already unfolding within you. The more you master the unseen realms within you, the more you will understand the very nature of creation and how everything functions and operates. And you'll be able to receive and download new and new parts of divine archetypes of great wisdom. And don't try to force anything. Don't try to claim anything, but because wisdom cannot be claimed, it is born from within. So just be, enjoy, and I'll see you in the next video message. Take care. Lots of love, wisdom, and power, as always.